All right, 7:01, call the meeting to order. Mrs. Troxel, lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show Mrs. Dickman is absent. All of the board members are present. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
Yes, we were working off the revised agenda from May 10th.
There's public comment. Please know for policy 121-02, time limits may be established by the presiding officer. And for policy 121-05, Board of Education members may not comment on any public comment, even though permitted to do so by law. Time limits of 3 minutes per person, and the total time for public comment is 30 minutes. Is there anybody wishing to address the board? Nobody? All right. Two reports. The district administrator's report.
Okay, so just a couple of updates and then a couple of announcements. So we do have our buildings and property and personnel meeting this Thursday, starting at 6 o'clock. And then our non-monetary awards are, our art fair is at the end of this week here at the Richland Center High School. It's a district-wide art show that we've got up here. And then our non-monetary awards are next Friday, with our monetary awards on Wednesday, May 31st. So for those high school parents, they should be looking for that information. And then just a couple of recognitions. In the Wisconsin Energy Cooperative News, each year the energy cooperatives around the nation provide scholarships as well as putting on the Youth Leadership Conference, and students attending this conference can be selected to attend the youth tour in Washington, D.C. And this year, Richland Center High School's McKenna Munson was selected to attend that. And so this June, McKenna will attend the Member Appreciation Picnic and the annual meeting in Washington, D.C. as a representative of the Wisconsin Electric Cooperative Association. So congratulations to McKenna for that. That'll be a great honor. Very few times does Richland Electric Cooperative get that opportunity to have those delegates from Richland Center. And then secondly, at the state speech contest, there are 33 schools that received recognition for their overall performance at the Wisconsin State Speech Festival in DeForest. And the top 10% of medal-earning schools are recognized with the Distinction in Speech Award. And this year, Richland Center High School, with advisor Sonny Clarson, was recognized as well. So congratulations to those folks as well. I think that is it.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? All right. Board member reports.
Curriculum met on Thursday, May 4th. We had a really long agenda. We had 11 different items on there, but we got a lot done. We did reorganize the committee. I am the chair, and we are going to meet on the first Thursday of each month, so we're going to continue with that. We're hoping that policy and curriculum can do the same thing as we have been doing, whichever one has the lighter agenda. We'll probably start at 6 p.m., followed by the second committee. And then we did look through the meeting schedule, but we are going to finalize that in June. We had a presentation on the FFAA Learning Center, which that did get approved for next school year, but that's going to allow opportunity for students to get real life experience with livestock here at our CHS. Mr. Troxel provided us a really nice presentation on curriculum, which is then going to personnel, and we'll talk more about that, but it was a nice presentation by him. We discussed the community resource officer, which is on tonight's board agenda. We adopted a 7th and 8th grade English resource. We did get an update on the Immigrant Children Youth Grant, and then we reviewed contracts for the charter school as well. That's an agenda item for tonight. Graduation caps, we did approve that the seniors could decorate their caps. They have a very nice process laid out so that things are going to be appropriate on them, and we have a backup plan if something is not. And calendar revisions is on tonight's agenda, and then we are going to talk more about the district goals in June.
The policy committee also met on May 4th and reorganized, and I am the chairperson for that committee. We had a much lighter agenda than the curriculum did. Had a couple of policies that we were looking at, policy 5851, with the school events on Wednesdays, Sundays, and holidays. And then also reviewing some of the policy changes that will be taking effect July 1st of 2023. And then also discuss briefly some future policy items that we will be addressing throughout the school year. Probably the biggest one that we also adjusted was the public comment. That's a revision and not a new policy, but it's a revised, and we'll be addressing that here this evening. Then also Foundation met both May 8th and tonight, May 15th. And the bulk of that conversation was scholarship awards for both of those. And then we also, the foundation will be sponsoring the RCHS musical for this next school year.
Thank you. All right, it's the student council report.
Okay, so for our events committee, we just finished up our last blood drive. Not a lot of schools get to do a third one for the year. So we got about 31 bags collected that day, which brings us around like over 90 bags collected for the school year, pints of blood, which is really, really phenomenal. Another thing for events, as Mr. Bosworth is having us plan out like some of the last day of school activities, similar to what we did last year. And then for fundraising and fundraising is also going to be taking part in kind of like a teacher retirement recognition during our next homeroom assembly, Mr. Bosworth. Our next meeting for student council will be talking about newly elected members as their seniors are leaving. It'll be our last senior meeting, and then we'll also vote on homecoming for that, and then we'll get leave like I said before. So that'll be fun. And as for donations, we're still deciding where we're going to put our money into, but probably something in the community. We just haven't figured it out yet. But yeah, I do believe that's all I have. And yeah, Mrs. Wirtz and Mr. Homer, thank you for allowing us to take credit great cause. It's just something we really wanted to do. So. Any questions for you guys? Sweet. If you, again, have any questions, you can contact Mr. Johnson or Ben Stoller. Well, I'll leave that for myself, so thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Make a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes of May 1st, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Bailey?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, on to the financial items. Approval of statement of cash dated May 9th, 2023.
I move we approve the statement of cash dated May 9th, 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Board, anything you'd like to add?
Two significant transfers that by policy I need to let the board know of. One, that we did have transfer of $450,000 from our local government investment pool to Community First Bank to cover payroll and fringes for the May 10th payroll. And then at a previous board meeting, the board had adopted the resolution to apply the defeasance to our Fund 39 debt. And so we did transfer $1,737,010.30 from our Community First Bank checking account. Well, we transferred it from local government investment pool to Community First checking account, and then wired that money to Associated Bank to actually apply the defeasance to. So that is done, and we have all the paperwork and closing documents back on that transaction, so that is off our books.
Discussion for the board? All right. Mr. Dowden made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Wertz. Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 Alright, on to approval of invoices.
I move we approve Community First Bank general checking account checks number 85300 through number 85331 and ACH number 222301373 through number 222301449 for a net total of $317,990.15. This is for the purpose of general operating costs of the district.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Dowden, seconded by Mrs. Wertz. Mr. Board, anything to add?
Just a couple of things to point out for the board. I actually had this first one on my list to point out last week, or at the last board meeting, and I didn't do that, so I'll point it out now. If you look on page 1 of the PDF, the second and third items on there, there's payments to diversified benefit service for HRA reimbursements, and you'll see these throughout the approval of checks. Okay, and I just want to let the board know that when you see the HRA reimbursements, the school district picks up the second half of the deductible for an employee that is on the HRA plan. So the plan itself sits as a single plan as a $2,000 deductible, family plan is a $4,000 deductible. However, the district picks up the second half of that. So on a single plan, the employee pays the first $1,000, district pays the second $1,000. Family plan, employee pays the first $2,000, district picks up the second $2,000. And so this time of the year, you will often see employees that have now met that first half, and so you're going to see a lot more of these HRA reimbursements. The district commits that $60,000 to that fund to fund this, and that's when you see these, that's what that is. That's the second half of those health insurance deductibles for employees through this plan year. So they'll be pretty frequent here from now through the end of the plan cycle. And then the second thing, on page 2, you'll notice an invoice, or excuse me, a check to Midwest Appraisal Group for the appraisal of Lincoln Elementary School for $3,000. Now I want to make sure that everybody's clear. The board did just approve the appraisal to be done for Jefferson Elementary, okay, and that was at a price of $3,500. In doing so, Midwest Appraisal sent us this and said, can you check your records? We do not believe this bill was ever paid, okay? It was done at the same time that Rockbridge was paid. The Rockbridge bill was paid, the the Lincoln one was not done. It was right when we were looking at selling Lincoln, and so we needed to settle up with Midwest Appraisal. They are not even 100% confident that they ever mailed the invoice, but we do have a record that the board approved it, that it would be done. So we did go ahead and pay that. So this is truly for Lincoln from a year ago. It will come out of this year's budget, and we will have in the near future the appraisal of Jefferson as well. So, any questions on that?
Any discussion from the board? Mr. Dowden?
Aye.
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 Right. Mrs. Coleman, consent agenda items?
Accept the donation of 7 pairs of track spikes valued at approximately $560 from Dick Pond Athletics. approve the budget adjustments for the 2022-23 fiscal year. This shall require at least a 2/3 majority vote. A summary of these transfers is as follows. Number 1, decrease interfund transfer for Fund 46. Number 2, increase interfund transfer for Fund 96, tournament losses. Number 3, high school budget adjustments. Number 4, primary school budget adjustments. Number 5, increased common school fund from DPI. Number 6, computer network budget adjustments. Number 7, Title I budget adjustments. Number 8, ESSER 2 budget adjustments. Number 9, ESSER 3 budget adjustments. And number 10, Title III budget adjustments. And then approve acceptance of the CCLC grants for Richland Center primary and intermediate schools as presented. That's it.
Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion made by Mrs. Wertz, seconded by Mr. Baling. Any discussion? Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
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 On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to thank Dick Pond Athletics for their generous donation. Is there a motion to approve the modified agenda?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
So a motion, Mr. Balin, seconded by Ms. Troxel. Discussion? Mrs. Wertz?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Great. Information and discussion items, district transfers and vacancies.
All right, so in the attached PDF, there are 4 pages there. First is the 23-24 non-union jobs and assignments. We have the one position for the special education administrative assistant and district office receptionist. That position interviews were conducted today, and we hope to have a name to the board at the next board meeting. And then page 2 is the certified staff. You'll see that we've got a lot of several, I don't know if a lot's the right word, but several teacher positions open. Most of those postings have been closed and interviews are happening, and many of those will have a name brought to the board later this evening. And then on page 3, we've got our cross-categorical aid for support staff. That is a position that we're looking to bring a name to the board soon, and I guess, and then the certified staff for the summer of 23 is actually on the 5th page of the PDF. Page 4 is blank, and so that those are positions that we also look at filling here later this evening as well, or at least many of them. So knee-deep in the hiring for 23-24, but we've got a pretty good start on it.
Any questions for Mr. Board? All right, on to action items. 2023-24 school calendar revisions.
Okay, so just so everybody's fully aware, I did re-upload a revised calendar proposal this afternoon that included a box around January 12th, which was the end of the quarter. It indicated it in the memo, but it didn't indicate it on the calendar. So just full disclosure there on what was changed. So this is the 23-24 school calendar that we're talking about. This went to the Curriculum Assessment and Public Relations Committee, and essentially administration and truthfully many staff, they're really looking to try to get professional learning communities, PLC time, collaboration time for teachers to work on assessments, curriculum, and how to go about how things are going in their classrooms. And so in order to really do that, we needed some time chiseled out in our calendar. And so the majority of changes that are being proposed here, this calendar was approved by the board last year. Friday, November 10th would become an early release day. Friday, December 8th would become an early release day. Thursday, January 11th was the end of the quarter, and that would get pushed back to Friday, January 12th, which I just alluded to. This will also coincide with DPI's second Friday in January count, which was a little problematic this year with us not having school on that day. We had to do it the next Friday, and then any early graduates, we were not allowed to count in our student count. So this will take care of that. And then Friday, January 26th would be an early release day. So essentially, transferring a couple of full days into an early release day, and then adding Friday, January 12th from an in-service day to a day of school. This, coupled with a little earlier start time at the high school, proposed start time of 7:55, dismissal at 3:25, that should give us more minutes than we had available in this school year for hours of instruction, which should give us a little bit more flexibility with weather. And even if we did have a bad weather year, have a few more days built in than we had this year. So that would be the proposed changes at the recommendation of the Curriculum Assessment Public Relationships Committee. And then just a couple of other points of interest. Homecoming week is the week of September 25th, with the parade being on that Friday, September 29th. I know that was talked about here at a recent board meeting. And then spring break will be that last week in March, March 25th through the 29th. And both the approved calendar and the proposed calendar are in the attachments.
Any questions for Mr. Ward? All right, is there a motion to approve the revisions to the 2023-24 school calendar as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Wertz, second Mr. Bailing. Discussion. Aye.
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 Richland Online Academy Charter School contract with Governance Board.
So we currently have one charter school, that's the Richland Online Academy, and a charter school has to have a governance board. The Richland School Board oversees the charter school, but the charter school itself does have a governance board, and so there needs to be a contract with the school board and that governance board. We've had one in place for the with the Richland Online Academy for the past several years. We are looking at making one modification to that contract, and that is on line 17. The previous budgeted amount was $140,000, although we did up that to $160,000 after the pandemic and an increase of students looking to go online. But with the hopeful formation of the alternative school, which is the next agenda item, we're looking to shift that money to that school and remove it from the ROA school. And so the contract is essentially unchanged with the exception of line 17, which reduces that budgeted amount to $40,000, still allowing those students who we feel that can be successful in that charter school to have that option, but to not make it quite as readily available to as many students, and instead put our resources into the alternative school.
Questions?
And that is a 3-year contract, correct?
That's a 3-year contract.
And I did notice some typographical errors that we cleaned those up after. Do we need to take care of that with approving it?
No, as long as none of the typographical errors change the concept or the content, like bushes and buses, then we can just keep it as it is, and we'll get those typos cleaned up.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the Richland Online Academy Charter School contract with Governance Board as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mrs. Wertz, seconded by Mr. Doudna. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Bailing?
Aye.
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 Partner and charter school contract with governance board.
Okay, so Partner is the name of the alternative school that we are looking to start. We've talked about this for a good chunk of this school year. You've got a lot of background content there in the memo. Essentially, since last May, we have been a team of people who have been visiting various schools and really try to figure out how can we start a charter school and what would it look like. And so this is the official action that the board would take on starting an alternative school named the Partner Charter School that for year one would be a project-based learning model. We would try to keep enrollment relatively minimal, 12 to 15 students the first year to really allow us to be successful in learning what we don't know about it. And then in year two, not only expand that enrollment, but also add the second phase to it, which would be looking at doing a credit recovery program, possibly even replacing the GEDO 2 program that we've got up here at the high school, and do that in the afternoon. It is an alternative programming. We would have a certified teacher, a licensed teacher at whatever location this ends up being at, and it would allow students who don't succeed or don't do well learning in the traditional classroom model to be able to quote-unquote do school in a way that suits their needs, in a way that the curriculum can be designed with the involvement of the student and the teacher to be able to facilitate instruction around a way that is beneficial and relevant to the student while maintaining the same rigor that we expect of our students and meeting all of the state standards. And so this contract would allocate $110,000, most of that, well, all of it getting shifted from that ROA budget that we just looked at to allocate it towards the Partner Charter School for their budget. It's kind of a big deal, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Dr. Johnson's here as well. She's took the lead on the majority of this. I'll make sure that all questions are answered before we dive into this. You know, we've been talking about it for a while, but this is a big step.
It's kind of minor, but what does partner stand for?
I don't have it memorized, let me look it up.
Sorry.
We came together as a group and just said some words that we thought would kind of emulate what a student would look like. Do you have it? Just to see. I'm looking in my drive. I think P is perseverance. Hold on, sorry. It's a little sluggish, I apologize.
Well, while you guys are looking that up, can you just kind of talk about what it looks like? In year two, we would have somebody who would be a little bit bigger and more designated who oversees it, but what does your look like for overseeing it? Kind of who would be that person?
Yep, so once the school is approved, then we would post for the position, and that teacher would need to have or to get in the near future an alternative school license, all right? It's 6 to 9 credit program at various universities throughout the state. And then they would have, again, they would kind of facilitate what school looks like for the individual student. So if we all have all these students in there and you're really interested in welding and Mr. Hunter is really interested in computer programming, you are both going to do school, but that teacher would sit down with you and find curriculum and things for you to get your core subjects in, but you'll do it in a way that centers around welding. You'll probably try to get a partnership with local community businesses or people to help with that, for you to get some hands-on experience, where Mr. Hunter will still be doing the 4 core subjects, all right, and get all of his core curriculum, but he would be, we would be partnering with somebody who has a background in computer coding or something. So you'll both be doing school, but instead of you being given an assignment and say, here's what you're going to do this, it would be centered around your interests, and it would really be a partnership between the school, or excuse me, the student and the teacher to really drive what that looks like. And they can go as fast or as slow as they want in a manner that they can really excel. We really modeled most of this off of what Boston does. Boston started, I believe, in 2012. Does that sound right, Sherry? I think they're near 10. And they started off very similar, 12, 15 people, and now they're at over 100 and turning away people. It's just boomed for them, and they've developed some really good partners and had some really, really good academic success stories. They had a young lady go to Harvard that graduated from the alternative school, so this is for full range of students. It's just done in a little different manner.
And then as far as students that would get recommended to do that program, that would come from the school or the family?
For this part, anybody would have the opportunity to apply for it, and then we would have to follow the DPI regulations on a lottery system. But we will also try to identify students and say this might be a good fit.
And we'd also kind of want to meet with them. We do the same thing with the ROE students.
Same
Make sure it's a fit. Yeah. Because some students, they really do need a different way to learn, and some students are just looking for something easier. And none of the models are easy. And so that's essentially the message we need to convey, that there's 26 credits to gain. We're going to do it in 3 different ways. How do you want to gain your credits? So,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I have the acronym. P is for problem solvers, A is for academic rigor, R is for responsibility, T is for transcend, N is for navigate, E is for elevate, and R is for real world skills.
Thank you.
There's a presentation that's been shared on our Facebook page, I believe, that we did kind of a community information session to kind of share a little bit about it. Essentially, my hope is to apply for the charter grant. It hasn't been open for a few years, but it's supposed to come open in 2024, and so we're trying to lay some foundation so that we can find some funding sources for this too, to help really, if it does what we think it's going to do, it's going to have a lot of interest, and so we're going to need a lot of resources in the next year or two, and so I'm hoping to be able to help fund some of that with grants.
Could you share what success looks like for these students?
I would say success for these students would be in their definition, what success would be. So we would work with them. They would tell us what they think is success. The part we have to worry about are all the legal aspects of providing education to students, requiring that they get credits, how they get them. Like in the contract that you're looking at tonight, we have some flexibilities with the charter alternative school and the delivery model, the curriculum we use, the calendar that we would use. Even though we're not really looking to use those really flexible in a flexible way right now, we don't want to stop ourselves from being able to in the future for certain students. And so I think that they would find success if they learn things, truly, because there are students that go through the motions in this building and don't learn what we need them to learn to be successful in our community. And that's really what we want them to be, is successful and participating as an adult in our community.
After the first year, what is let's say the second year is really rolling, how many, what's the maximum amount of students that you're looking to be in this program?
We will set that like midway through this next year.
Okay.
So our governance board is going to meet about 3 times a year, and so during our mid-year meeting, they would set that. So we would have to look at what the interest is. Open enrollment is shortly after the mid-year, and so we need to be prepared and understand, if there's a waiting list that we've had to create already for the start of the school year, then we would have to, take that into consideration when we design the following year's availability.
Thank you.
Our staff would need to
have a weigh in on that. We're not gonna just say, great, 15, how about 45? You wanna try that? Like, we would wanna make sure that we have a team effort and have those conversations. And it would, by you, if you're considering signing this, which I hope you are considering it, and the governance board has signed it already, essentially, between the two of you, you can control what happens. So you can say, yeah, no more. Like tomorrow, if you decided that that's what you wanted to do, that's your right. You can dissolve that school. So we kind of did that, going from a 5-building to a 3-building model. There's controls you have in place that will never be taken from you, no matter if there's a governance board under you or not. So just ensuring that you communicate with us, and we will with you too, to make sure that we're delivering what we advertised.
And I see this was Boston. Are there any other schools in the area that offer anything like this?
Not project-based.
Okay.
Mineral Point has one, but it's really more credit recovery.
Okay.
Trying to think of other, Fenimore has one. Theirs is an alternative. I wish Robin were here so I could ask her about it a little bit more, but it's kind of a mix between the two, in cooperation with Southwest Tech.
Okay. Thank you.
And if there's anything you want me to look into, or something you're curious about, or you want to go to Moscow with me sometime?
What would grading look like for this? If you're saying the student sets his success, her success story there, but the instructor or whoever they're working with for their project determines that they're really not doing anything, how is that factored into it?
Well, essentially, the platform that we're looking to use, they would design their own learning unit, so then it would have all the pieces laid out, the expectations that go along with it, and it's more of a pass-fail. Like, did you do it? Didn't you do it? If you didn't do it well, let's go back and try to do it better. And then, they keep working that through, trying to make sure it's what it needs to be. It's not going to be the same kind of grading as what we have in this one.
Correct, but that's why I wanted to see what it looked like.
Yep, absolutely. And that model may change as we work through this. I want to make sure that, I'm saying these things, I'm not going to be the one in there with students. And so I want to make sure that we honor what the teacher brings also. And so we'll work through some of those pieces. If we need to come to you for guidance or changes or anything like that to our delivery methods or grading or anything like that, we'd be glad to do that, especially through the curriculum committee.
Any other questions from board members? Is there a motion to approve the partner charter school contract with governance board as presented?
I will.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So Mr. Hunter made the motion, Ms. Troxel seconded it. Any more discussion?
So if I could, I do think it's worth pointing out, we talked about the governance board and just recognizing those people, Wayne Morgenthaler, Todd Ostrander, Judy Barnacle, Joy Lineweber, Martha Bauer, and Elizabeth Perkins are those that are on the governance board, and Dr. Johnson is the administrator that helps facilitate that, so.
Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 Before we move on to the next topic, is there a time frame where the board can get an update on how it's moving along, and just to see where we're at with it and how it's progressing?
Absolutely, I think we're gonna need to keep not only our board, but our community and our public informed on where we're at with this, so I think we should make this probably a monthly topic and give a little update on it, and more frequently if needed, if the board's okay with that.
Okay.
The Community Resource Officer MOU.
One second. Okay, so item 9D, also something that has been in the works that we've talked about for a while, and now it's finally time to see if we can approve it, at least on our end. So the school district has been working with Chief Billy Jones and the City of Richland Center over the last year on establishing a community resource officer. Community resource officer is someone who would be employed through the City of Richland Center, but in partnership with the city and the school, and partially funded by both entities. School resource officers or community resource officers have gained popularity in many school districts to try to help with school safety, and as well as just really try to develop a good liaison between law enforcement, schools, families, and students. Oftentimes, students have their only with law enforcement can be negative, and so by having more visibility, more relationships built by law enforcement and a positive interaction, that just helps reinforce that partnership, and school benefits, community benefits, and families benefit. Richland School District is the only Southwest Wisconsin Conference school that does not currently have a CRO in some capacity. I believe it's Lancaster or Prairie had a part-time. They're looking to go to a full-time. So this is kind of the new wave. I know that there is potential funding out there in the state budget or through grants that may be available. It's not there yet, but they may be looking at funding at the state level CRO positions. Right now, because it is a community resource officer, it can be funded, the school district's portion can be funded through our community service fund, which is our Fund 80. Fund 80 is an additional levy put on to the school adopts the levy in October. However, the plan for what the Richland School District would look at doing if this is approved would be to continue to keep that mill rate at $9.12, okay? And approximately 7.5 cents of that would, instead of going towards defeasance and defeasing, you just heard me talk earlier that we defeased 1.7 million, that would be reduced by this approximately $70,000 mark. And so next year we may only defease 1.6 million and some change, and then additional money would go to offset the CRO, our portion of it. And but we would keep the mill rate at $9.12, and the community would not see any tax increase, or at least in terms of the tax rate. Okay, so the estimated cost, so the city and the school district run on different fiscal years. The city runs on January 1st to December 31st fiscal year. The school runs on July 1st to June 30th fiscal year. So when we're talking about our fiscal year, July 1 of 2023 through June 30th, 2024, kind of all in, wages, benefits, equipment, training, etc. We're looking at an expected cost, total cost of right around $100,000, okay, between $96,200 and $103,200. The proposal is that the school district would pay 70% of the cost, while the city would pay 30% of that, and so that would put the school district's financial burden right around $70,000, between $67,300 and $72,200. A little variable because of overtime and those kinds of things. Again, this would be an employee of the city. They would spend their primary portion of their day would be in the school buildings. Spend time in all three buildings, while they probably would have their home up here at the high school and provide an office up here. They would certainly become a familiar and friendly face at the other buildings as well. So there would not be any negative financial impact from our general operating fund. Again, this would just be offsetting what we would prepay in debt by that $70,000 mark. I believe I've touched base on everything. The job description is attached, and the proposed MOU is attached. I believe we've worked through it, have everything. This was a MOU that other school districts have used. So I don't think there's anything in here that's too outrageous. But I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have regarding a CRO for next school year.
And would it be the same officer every year that would be at the school, or would that be up to?
It would be up to the city. We want to make sure, and I believe that Chief Jones is on the same page, that we really want this to be the right fit, right? This needs to be not just somebody who has a badge, but somebody who is good at building relationships and has good rapport with the students. So if we found somebody that was really, really good and everybody was satisfied, we would anticipate keeping that. By the same token, they would certainly have the ability to change that if it wasn't a good fit, or if the person left the department, or unforeseen circumstances that make the change. But certainly have the ability to, if all goes well, and that would be the hope.
Just noticing that the contract, the term of the contract goes through December 31st, 2025. Is that because it's based on the city calendar versus the school calendar?
That is correct.
And then when would the option to renew, or however you want to call that, take place to be able to maintain that, or potentially maintain the CRO for the second semester?
Yeah, much like the alternative school, this is going to be an ongoing discussion to make sure, both from a city standpoint and a school district standpoint, that this is working and satisfying what we want it to and meeting the goals. And so, if for some reason it's just not working for either party, there are safeguards in place where we can get out. Assuming that it does work, this just gives us the ability to tweak some things as needed if we do need to update the MOU with some additional language. So we would have that ongoing discussion to answer your question. Probably look at that our school year of 24-25, which then gives the city another 6 months before the expiration of the MOU. Hopefully try to stay ahead of the game. That would be my plan, so that we don't have a lapse. If we wait till the 25-26 school year, there's 6 months left, but we would have 6 months left of the school year. So I would want to have that conversation sooner rather than later.
And then in section 6, the duties and responsibilities, section 6C7, where it talks about the, I lost the note. The question I have is just access to the buildings. Will the officer have keys to the building, or would it still need to be, essentially a non, because they're employed by the city? Are they going to have access if they need to get in for whatever reason? Because I'm just seeing that they're to be patrolling the entire school buildings, and some areas may be locked, not locked, that kind of situation.
Yep, so we have, our law enforcement does have access to our buildings currently if there is an emergency that they need to enter. This person would have keys just like an employee would, and be able to access the building for duties pertaining to their job as a CRO, not just to be able to enter the building whenever they would want to. So that would still be deemed for emergency use, where there's something where the law enforcement have to get in. So otherwise, it would be treated very similar to an employee, where technically they're an employee of the school, so regardless of the city.
They would do educational trainings with kids that happens naturally right now. Would that be the same person that would go to like St. Mary's, and because I know they have that too? Would this be
That's
the
what we would
same
hope,
person?
is
Okay.
that whether it's the Counteract program, or the
Right,
drug
yeah.
program, or sometimes, sometimes it's certainly a good resource. Sometimes these people will be in plain clothes, sometimes they will be in uniform. Educational service they're providing.
Is there any additional training other than the requirements listed here that they would need to fulfill their duties?
Specific to the school?
Yeah, any special training that, you know, maybe look for this or look for that, you know, as far as like bullying or whatever, something like that?
As far as what they, I'm sorry, Mr. Dowden, as far as what they would take on, or in terms of training to identify it?
Just training, specialized training to identify like school atmosphere.
Right. Mr. Jones, do you care if I put you on the spot? Can you answer the training protocol?
Yeah, sure. So we would plan, or we would help them take on specialized training specifically for SROs or community resource officers. And there's a national organization now that helps with that. And they always, I think it's in February, always have a conference in the Appleton, Oshkosh, Green Bay area where we will hopefully be able to send officers, or the officer that's chosen for the special assignment up, and they have different breakout sessions where they can learn from other CROs and SROs on what types of things to be looking for, because it is a different environment than what we, law enforcement, is normally used to out on the street. So we would encourage that. We would emphasize, you know, all of the extra training that would be more specific, not only to better in the student body, but also assisting teachers with certain trainings and parents with certain trainings. You know, the plan and the process would be to hopefully get this person and this officer involved in the active threat trainings that I have done over a lot of years, but have this person more involved with that as well. And again, to keep that familiar face. And and like Steve said, if we find the right person, hopefully we'll keep them around for a while. There's different models that I've been looking at, and how long to keep somebody in this position because of burnout and other things. Some are 3 years, some are 5 years, some are just annually, and then we just review it to kind of do an annual review every year to find out is this still something they're passionate about and going after and coming after it. So it's fluid, I think, and some of it, but we're hoping to pick the right person, which is, it's already started. It's already kind of in the back of my mind, but obviously with maybe some help from Steve himself and some of the other instructors and teachers up here, definitely want feedback and involvement with everyone.
With the hours, just speaking of overtime hours, one of the sections discusses being available for school dances and other things. Obviously, it's an 8-hour work day, 5 days a week. That hits 40 hours without doing any extra. And then obviously with being a city employee, city police officer, and there's a call that happens, they're going to get pulled away from the school potentially. What's the balance looking like to be able to, we have dances, we have graduation, we have baccalaureate, whatever the extra events would be for balancing those hours?
I think that would be an ongoing discussion that the city and the school have as far as needs. If we are not recognizing that this is something that there's got to be a high police presence on, like a baccalaureate, for instance, as opposed to, a dance where we maybe want some police presence, or even a big rivalry between two sports teams where we just want somebody around. But whether that's all overtime or we shift their schedule a little bit to allow for that to happen, that's going to be really more of a logistical standpoint that I think the city and the school need to work out. I think we have that flexibility.
Yep, and then another MOU I'm working on right now that's not in your guys' packets is with our union. So our law enforcement officers have a union, and some of those hours are quite strict and stringent when it comes to overtime and things like that, and officers are always after overtime. It's just part of the gig. But one of the spots in the MOU focuses on schedule flexibility and almost like flex hours. So if they're, obviously pre-planned occasions, dances and things of that nature, the officers will have that flexibility, and it'll be their responsibility to kind of take that stuff on. Maybe they come in 4 hours late that day, come in at noon instead of 11, or leave, or at 7:30, or leave a little bit early so they can come back and work the evening shift. Or maybe they, work 12, 14 hours one day and take a Friday off, and have a little bit extra weekend. It'll definitely play, but we hopefully, as the union looks at the contracts and the MOUs, they'll have that flexibility, and the officers understand the need to kind of regulate that overtime as much as possible, because we are looking at tax dollars, that we have to be responsible for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the MOU with the City of Richland Center for a community resource officer?
Make a motion?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So a motion made by Mrs. Wertz, second Ms. Troxel. Any more discussion? No? All right, Mr. Dowd.
Aye.
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 Right. To 9E, the policy 0167.3, effective July 1, 2023, public comment at board meetings.
Okay, so this is a policy that we currently have. It's policy 121, addressing the board at meetings. Our current policy is pretty light on what is allowed and what isn't allowed at public board meetings. After the pandemic, most school districts, especially those that had Neola, updated their policies around public comment at board meetings. Now that we've got Neola, we're addressing it as well. Because it is a revision, it would fall under policy 118, which says that it doesn't need 2 readings. Those are for new policies. This would be 118.14, says that it can be revised at a board meeting. The proposal would be that this public comment policy, and this was actually written by Mr. Strang, our general counsel for the district, but capturing the idea of what our policy committee had intended. And the proposal would be that this would take effect on July 1, and to let everybody know, the board does have the right to revise a policy at any time, so that could go into effect sooner if it likes the policy. But I did put bullet points there. Well, you're welcome, and I encourage you to read the entire policy. General areas to draw attention to indicates the amount of time, 3 minutes, maximum of 30 as a whole. Comments are limited to those within the jurisdiction and authority of the board, so people can't just come and speak on anything that's not even within the jurisdiction of this board, right, as a way to just have a public forum. Indicates who could address the board, and that would be residents of the district. The board is electors of the district, and so it would be residents of the district, parents and guardians of a student enrolled in the district or currently enrolled student of the district could address the board, and they must be physically present, okay? There are other means for those who are unable to attend a meeting in person, but there are a lot of unknowns in the ability to control or even see or know what's going on behind cameras on Zoom. And so at the advice of our general counsel, people should address the board in being physically present. Again, there are ways for those people who are unable to attend to still address the board through written comments, emails, things like that. And then it just outlines a little bit more detail what is prohibited and what people can and can't do, and it's just general courtesies as far as not individual complaints. Comments can't be directed at individual people. Obscenities, vulgarities, profanities would be prohibited. and performance of individuals would be prohibited as well as academic performance of students and teachers that are instructing. So anything that would be protected under FERPA would not be allowed in public comment. Again, it just outlines it. It's really nothing, I don't think most people would have an issue with it. It's just outlining it a little bit more than what our current policy does. So that is the policy in a nutshell. But again, happy to answer any questions that you have, or we can send it back to policy if there are specific concerns that the board members have. Policy committee, I guess, Chairman Bailing, if you have anything to add on policy.
Covered it.
Any other questions from board members? All right. Is there a motion then to approve policy 0167.3, public comment at board meetings effective July 1st, 2023?
So moved?
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Beeling, seconded by Mrs. Wertz. Any discussion?
I guess the only question I have for the board is, do we want to move the start date of this policy to be immediate versus starting this one July 1st with the rest of the new deal updates that we did? Or just leave it? I'm okay with it.
I'm fine with July 1st.
Okay. All right, Mr. Huntemer?
Nay.
Aye.
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 I'll make a motion, then we move into closed per statutes 19.851C and/or F as appropriate to consider employment, promotion, and compensation of employees for purposes of discussing individual employee hiring and compensation. Wisconsin statutes 19.851E for the purposes of discussing sale and/or purchasing of public property. In Wisconsin statutes 19.851F and Wisconsin statutes 118.125 to discuss student open enrollment, applications, and individual pupil information related to those applications. The board may take action on these issues in closed session if necessary and appropriate. At the conclusion of the closed session, the board will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Wertz?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you.